Ready? I'm ready. I forgive myself for any mistakes that I'm going to make while recording this video. I show myself grace and compassion, and let's go. If paper is more patient than people, then I'm left wondering what that makes my camera. Tonight, I think through the page of words and how they make me make sense of the world around me. Subsequently, I think about my pages as an extension of me and an extension of my mind, a meat computer that exists within the confines of my skull. Speaking to you today, here, through this lens, it makes me wonder whether the intimate relationship that I have cultivated with my notepads and Lord Byron-esque relationship that I have with my notes app can be replicated by talking down the barrel of a kit lens to a disembodied audience. I guess I'll never know, but hey, for today's video, I'd like to talk about a bit of everything. I'm gonna be all over the place, but mainly focus on surrendering and letting go, being in harmony with your intuition, as it were. And I think I'd like to start this by saying that unlike other videos that take a sort of self-care approach to the topic of surrendering, going with the wind and going with the flow, I want this to be less of a self-care guru's wet dream and more of a discussion or a manifestation and explanation of the feelings that I'm feeling, again, to said disembodied audience. The good thing is you guys can say shit back, so I'm just gonna let the faucet leak, metaphorically. Exercise my curiosity. For this idea, I have the many great YouTubers who treat the platform as it was intended to thank, visual storytellers who've adapted and treated the platform as a diary, as a long distant friend who's being given an update about life, a therapist that you can tell your dreams, desires, pursuits and passions, failings, and everything in between. And so in the vein of treating YouTube like it was in 2008, one guy, one camera, no reference there, I'm going to talk about the things that inspired me in more detail. So basically, I recently watched a clip of Madeline RG's podcast where she talks about her life and the sort of notions that she was going through at the ages of 16 to 17. And she's got a very profound quote that really resonated with me. Not in a similar vein as I think she was talking about the ideas of self-harm and suicide in her videos, but just in feeling comfortable in one's own skin and being in one's own skin as it pertains to life. I'm going to quote her here. She's quoted being saying, her whole life she felt like she was uncomfortably sleeping on someone's couch. And this was her feeling that her time on earth was basically borrowed time and that she was passing by. And I am going to connect this to another short clip or segment that sort of crossed the wires in my brain in a similar instance, which was an interview that Pink Panthers did on her Heaven Knows album, I think, with Zane Lowe of Apple Music. And in it, she talks about the sort of ultimatum that she felt like she faced to express herself and give herself the chance to creatively pursue her dreams of music and her passions versus what she was currently doing, which I think was either film studies or fashion at UAL, something along those lines. I don't remember. But the two things that fascinate me and why I think these things overlap is because of this notion of surrender and this notion of being in tug of war with oneself, the idealized self, and not the idealized self in the sense of having perfect 10 out of 10 days and executing everything that a person wants to do without any flaws, without any hiccups, but the idealized self in the sense of what would a person who is me be doing right now, which would be the most true and authentic way to live according to that individual. So what would I be doing if I was living my most authentic life? You can tell I've been doing a Carl Jung boot camp recently. I know like about psychoanalysis and all that bullshit, but if you've got any idea and can explain that dense text to me, Hegel and all that bullshit, leave it down in the comments. But yeah, through listening to Madeline speak about her experience, about feeling like she was passing by, I always think about Frank Ocean's lyric where he says, "This is not my life and this is a fond farewell to a friend." The friend part is irrelevant to the conversation, but feeling like this is something that you are passively observing. It's happening to you and your sense of agency is not immediately there. Maybe because the dreams that you may want to pursue feel not unattainable, but a bit out of reach compared to what you're currently able to do. Or you have so many little fires that you immediately need to put out that even contemplating or thinking about starting to attack the real purpose of your being, the reason you are here on this earth, seems like something that is completely out of reach. And I related to that. I really related to the aspect of feeling like you're sleeping on someone's couch. He also speaks about how when you go over to someone's house, their house being a reflection of them makes them feel like they're so comfortable in their space, and how she does not feel that being here on earth, and how you find people who are so intact and in touch with their humanity that earth feels like their home, as it should be, because this planet we all share is our home, but they're so connected with the ground, their intuitions, their feelings, the food that they eat, the people that they meet, the games they play, the love or losses that they face, and everything that constitutes existence as a human being is something that comes naturally to them. And I felt like I was that stranger sleeping on the couch as it pertained to living on earth here. I felt like I was playing a game where there were rules that existed, but I was not aware of what those rules happened to be. And my script has just gone off. If you can tell, if this comes off as very robotic and stiff, I wanted this to be really premeditated. However, I have not built the camera skills to execute that just quite, so bear with me. But I was take 3. As I was saying before I was cut off, the sort of like natural, intuitive existence that just comes with being a person and being free and exploring what comes to you. I always would say in therapy sessions as well as in conversations with friends and family, a life that is driven by curiosity and passion, in contrast to stimulus, reactive life. You know, a consequence happens and therefore you act. That's a life that I would like to pursue going forward. And in the clip that Pink Pantheress was speaking to Zane Lowe, she touches a bit on this, where she said while she was in university, she felt trapped and she felt very constricted. And she realized that the things that she expressed her talent through be it the songs that she produced on a SoundCloud since the age of 16, and all her passion for 2000s two-step, jungle music, and the dance genre. I looked and did a little research on a video previously. You can check that out. This was something that deeply resonated with her, and yet it was not something that she was pursuing. And as she looked at the fact that she was not pursuing this, she came to a realization that she would never be this age again. I'm never going to be 21 again. 20, I don't know. Am I at that age already? I don't know what age I am. I'm not going to be this age again. And I get that in putting pressure for myself to have certain experiences by a certain age or do certain things by a certain age, it takes out the spontaneity and natural creativity that fuels the beautiful moments that one may look to have, that are the antithesis of feeling like you're sleeping on someone's couch uncomfortably or passively living on earth. But I think Zane Lowe illustrated that in Pink Panther's conversation, that a lot of people feel this sort of pressure to get like something sorted out by a certain age. This sense of authentic self-expression, or the sense of the vocation that they have to bring to the earth. And I think with that has come my understanding, for me personally, that I am divorced from my intuition. And my intuition is something that once I figure out would sort of possibly neatly lay the building blocks for other things to move forward in a smoother fashion. And so, like I said, I think being divorced from one's intuition makes it very difficult for them to carry on their pursuits forward, and makes it all the easier to feel like you're stuck in this sense of limbo or floating in time. And for me, this video is partially an attempt at combating that. I have, like I said, so much respect for creators and YouTubers who've treated the camera like it's their best friend, and treated the camera like it is a channel through which they can talk about things that they're most passionate about. And I feel like this is part of my journey and arc to quote-unquote surrender, as it were. I need to surrender is something that I need to tell myself, and I think so many other people could relate to needing to hear. Letting go. And not in the cheesy go with the flow kind of way. Actually, there is nothing cheesy about that. Yes, in the cheesy go with the flow kind of way. Because stuff like that, common adages, go with the flow, trust your gut, is easier said than done, okay? And it is something we consciously need to put effort into teaching ourselves to trust our bodies and trust our instincts when they tell us something is for us or something isn't for us. When they tell us they're afraid, or when they tell us we can't continue anymore, or when they tell us we should push more because there's something on the other side of this that may be very worthwhile. Yeah. The people who've taught me that it's okay to follow these instincts are these creators who I've spoken about. The means of understanding that I have articulating myself the way that I do, a desire to let out what's in me that is craving and crying to be expressed, or something along those lines. David Bowie said it better than I am able to articulate. When I speak about what's innately passionate to me, that's something that I have picked up from my immediate life through very few individuals that I've been lucky to meet, but mostly through people who've done what I'm doing right now, speaking to the camera and just letting it rip, essentially. Yeah, so I hope to get more candid with my uploads, and I hope to have more moments like this where I speak to the camera more authentically and I give it what I have to think about or what I have to say. whenever I look at my life these days, I think about the fact that the things that I truly desire, the things that are not quick fixes of dopamine, the things that are not things that do not enrich me and fulfill me, I can't help but think that there's a sense of disconnect from this. And this shows up in many things. It's in the career that I am pursuing, the quality and quantity of friendships that I make, and the way I approach making these friendships, or the effort that I put into making them. And I wonder how realistic it would be for me to achieve these things. Going back to the conversation about intuition, I get the sense that for a lot of people, there is this idealized self that they view, and this idealized self comes with an understanding of a way things used to be, right? Nowadays, and hold on, bear with me for a second. Nowadays, we talk a lot about the myth of greatness, right? The myth of greatness that exists when people talk about all this returning back to an era that previously was, whether it be sort of people with absolute abhorrent racist and nationalistic views like the MAGA individuals, or EDL, EDF, I don't fucking know, members in the UK, and all the alt-right people in Europe speaking about going to a past that once was. However, the catch-22 always being that this past has never existed. It is just an abstraction, a dog whistle to point at something and make promises of a past that never was. There was never a great America, or there was never a Great Britain. I mean, there was literally a Great Britain. It's literally Great Britain, but you get the point that I'm trying to make. And I think in that same way, the idealized self falls under this similar notion. You have this idea of, you look back at yourself, right? And I mean, the same can be true, that someone may look into the future and say, when I reach a certain point, I'm going to be this person with these goals, with this thing, and this right person. And for me, sometimes I think about like my output, my performance, and the way I carried myself when I was younger. I may have been as scared as I was of approaching life and approaching the challenges that came before me, but I seemingly got over it. And the part of me that exists now doesn't seem to remember the fear that I may have faced at that moment, but only remembers my ability to conquer, my ability to achieve and move forward. I really love the Burberry logo, by the way. I forget what it is in Latin, but it's translated to keep moving forward. That shit's hard. That shit's hard as fuck. I keep that in mind sometimes. Anyway, unrelated to that. Yeah, my ability to move forward before, in the past, something that came to me so naturally is something that I feel completely divorced and innately just disconnected from right now. From fatigue to bouts of decision paralysis, all these things, I stopped to wonder and ponder whether I always had these issues, or whether something quite happened which I cannot reconcile within myself. And when I think about that, it makes me feel very jaded about speaking about the future. When I think of the world of work, I think about how most people's approach to the world of work is just carrying on with the state of things, the state of the world, be it accepting sort of exploitative, unfair hours, normalizing trading one's labor for money, or trading one's sort of vitality. I'll use the word vitality because while labor is a person's physical capacity to work, I think vitality more encompasses the sort of like zest for life and just like battery full of like life energy that gets like drained from, you know, doing jobs that way or may well compensate you very well with a salary or a check or a sort of, you know, very nice perks and requirements, but do not fulfill, at least to me, what I believe is the core human want or value for things such as self-expression, creativity, and all the in-between. And so when I look at that, or I look at the people who are in the corporate game and speak about those who have a lack of willingness to play the sort of like bullshit, fake, and sort of just like all-around detestable game of power dynamic struggles and social negotiations to one-up other individuals into a place of comfort and a place of benefit for a particular person through a string of orchestrated social negotiations, social climbing and moves, I feel very fatigued, and I feel that it only adds to this sort of like dissonance that, again, I have been facing for such a long time, with life. You know, when you see that there is a way that you can live life that seems a bit more authentic to the values that you believe in, but the support systems or the ladders to get there are not only not the easiest, but are not something that you can immediately fathom in your point of view or in your frame of reference as an opportunity for you. It makes it really difficult to approach those pursuits and those sort of intuitions that would bring you not joy, but I would say fulfillment and healthy growth and challenges. It's sort of a vicious cycle. And in my experience, the more I think about it, the more I think through means of expression like this, I sort of separate myself from the belief systems that I disagree with and the things that I quite frankly do not subscribe to, and put myself in line with my idols and my heroes, those people who I think have made out of their lives and of themselves something that I have so much admiration for. Like I said, the artistic process, or just like real authenticity and doing things for the humanity of doing them. It is something that I find so beautiful. And I think this pressure also stems from the fact that I need to make a choice or a decision so quickly about understanding who I need to be or who I need to become. I attribute the reason to me rushing things being me being obsessed with the idea of getting away or transcending what life is at the moment, transcending a life where there is a power struggle or a tug of war, or there is a need to commit a sense of social posturing to neatly align with a certain checklist of predisposed values or predisposed interests, the sort of typecasting that exists and has been hyper exacerbated by, our online space like TikTok, WhatsApp, what am I? Boomer detected. WhatsApp, Jesus Christ. TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, the nichification and corification, the niching down and coring of everything, the neatly commodified and packaged ideals that one person can fit into, such that a person with such a personality does such a job, spends their weekends and free time in such a place at such a time, and has got such dislikes and such likes. I believe I'm a multifaceted individual, and I believe that for me to be appreciative of all these different means of expression does not fall within that narrow view of fitting a particular niche or a particular core or doing a particular job, as it were. But I feel like the world, time and time again, proves to show that it's not ready to give people like that or accept that as a viable means of deciding to spend your life or living. And I understand it is very easy for me to make this sort of argument, being in a position of privilege when I'm being supported by parents, when I am currently here with access to education, access to school, access to so many privileges that I greatly appreciate. However, I think that this should be available to all, not just to people who have access to these things, but to anyone who has got a dream. And what I'm tired of is people who have a utopian view of the world, or a sort of quote unquote unrealistic way of believing the world of work, the world of leisure, and just the world of humanity interacting with each other is unrealistic, because it is that sense of being able to see what is beyond the current scope of what's possible that has brought us so many of the things that we enjoy as comforts today. That's the whole point of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. That's the whole point of Nelson Mandela defeating apartheid. I mean, humanity as a race deciding to go to a moon. So many things that were beyond the scope of human understanding. I won't say human understanding, but I would say so many things that were just not commonly accepted to be the status quo have been challenged. And I think this could be one of these things. Not normalizing people living unfulfilling lives because it feeds a system that, while may seem like the most currently efficient system, has got a lot of casualties, from people who are being underpaid for their labor to people who are straight up being exploited in ways of time, money, and health. Before I started my university studies, I took a gap year, and in this gap year, I felt like, unlike others who spent their time traveling abroad, discovering themselves, I mostly stayed at home, and for many reasons I didn't understand. Maybe this being vaguely after COVID, this is when I noticed this gap in self and intuition. And at the time, I thought maybe a retreat or a hard reset is something that I would need. I know the answer is not a cabin in the woods. However, I'm open to exploring options. I thought about it really, and I thought about a sort of cleanse. And when I talk about a cleanse, I do not mean a sort of cleanse or spiritual baptism or shedding in the sort of Abrahamic, Catholic, Christian sense, but in the sense that to rebuild myself, I need to kill something. Skin on me, I'll have to shed again. There's your Blade reference for you. I promise it won't be too chronically online. But I had to take the mask off. I essentially had to divorce the element or the part of me that is so far removed from what I actually value, and then reapply or get more well acquainted with the mask, or the lack thereof a mask that exists, that is a true reflection of my passions, pursuits, and identities. I generally thought about what that would mean if I had not taken that gap year, or if I had spent that gap year doing work that I was passionate about, traveling abroad to countries and learning more about myself as a person, how I function in front of other people, what my fears are, my passions, my loves, the things I desire in people, the things I desire in experiences, and everything in between. I thought that while things were not going to be necessarily convenient, they would bring me closer to figuring out the answer that is myself, question mark. I had written a bunch of poems about the matter, and actually quite a lot of writing on my Substack, and the common themes that I discovered is, again, this idea of shedding skin, the idea of craving growth and renewal, doing things for the sake of passion and curiosity, and living a life driven by authenticity and one that is not driven by fear. I think fear is such an interesting emotion because it is something that motivates us to act. In our reptile lizard brain, there is something in us that reacts to stimuli and pushes us to do something because we are afraid of the negative consequences that may come to us. I remember a therapist and reading in a book someone mentioning to me that previously this was because we had what was called a death drive, and whatever we did was trying to prevent us from reaching that point of death. But as we've evolved as people and conquered most of our foes, we're not fighting saber-toothed tigers anymore. Those more immediate threats became abstracted within things such as social isolation, within things such as embarrassment, and all kinds of new elements that we as humans have to navigate that our brains have not caught up with. And I think these conflicting messages, as well as conflicting ideas on how to address said conflicting messages, caused my brain to go haywire, in the sense that I was stuck in a fight, flight, freeze situation, and I have frozen, essentially. The sense of stagnation, the sense of curiosity for life has seemed to be replaced by a voice that's asking me, are we in trouble today? No, we're not. Then we're okay. Or not so much then we're okay, but waiting for the next time that we might be in trouble, might not be in trouble. And I've obviously thought to myself, this is no way to live, you know? This essence of feeling like you're on borrowed time. Again, back to the brilliant Madeline Argy's illustration. I don't want to sleep on someone's fucking couch. I want my own house. I want to be very well situated in a life that I find is comfortable, but not only comfortable because I have all the trappings and luxuries of fame or fortune, or actually not the fame. I have a video on that as well, if you're inclined to check it out. I have conflicting views on fame. I think, to some extent, fame may solve some very close and personal, deep-rooted issues that I may have, but, I mean, it never does work out, does it, right? Who knows? But yeah, all these things and all these conflicting messages, right? I think that by doing things out of genuine authenticity, living a life that is driven by passion, and sort of facing these elements of regrowth and embracing them, surrendering to what life is, cultivating a sense of acceptance, I would honestly trade that in a heartbeat for a life of convenience, for a life that has got any of the material things that I have now, or more material things I may be craving later. Sometimes I think about how this is the life that I actively prayed for, right? And the life that I had wanted when I was younger, talking to my little self, thinking about what I thought uni was going to be, thinking about what I thought life in a big city was going to be. And I look at that and I say, did I truly want these things? When that prayer was answered, did I fully understand that I was going to receive it with both hands and have to hold on to it dearly, and need to have not only the sort of physical and mental tenacity to cope with it, but the ability to make the best out of it? There's times when I thought I wanted to trade it or for going back to my old life. But then I did remember that life doesn't move in all directions. Life goes linearly, or at least maybe that's my understanding of life. I'm trying to combat that. I believe there is benefit in looking at alternative means of understanding the way we perceive time and the way we perceive our lives, not as being something linear, but something all-encompassing and spiral. But as is, general convention in most cultures, or the predominant culture that is broadcast to the world, probably what you're exposed to if you're on the internet, the quote unquote global west. Ugh. Yeah. Who perceives time linearly. I did believe that there wasn't a way to go back, and for such a long time I wanted to go back. I think who's this nigga? Sigmund Freud, just messed up dude, talks about returning to the womb, right? And speaks about it as it being a sense of returning to that place of safety and that place of comfort. My mom would always have a quote where she would say that a ship is not built to stay in a harbor, it's built to sail stormy seas. And that quote would always make me sink, because when I would hear that, I would be like, well, I don't want to sink. Well, sorry, did I say it goes to sink? It goes to sail the sea. But I'd always think about sinking because I didn't want to sink. And with that being said, I think that there is a sort of comfort in recognizing and surrendering to the fact that you won't always get the chance to go back, but that's okay. You can give in to what life has to give you, and by sort of like, you know, I use that as an illustration to surrender. By surrendering, by just giving in, not fearing consequence, but being driven by passion. There's no promise that everything's going to go your way, but you give yourself a much easier time to live and get more in tune with your feelings and your intuitions. And that's all that really matters at the end of the day. It's our first time doing life, and the only answers that we seek exist within ourselves. So, yeah. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Bye.